can start. Okay. Good morning and welcome, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this version of Doha Forum this year. We will be having our guest who will be speaking in Arabic. So, in case you're not an Arabic speaker and you need the headset, you can find among the chairs. If you don't have any, there's just at the door. And I think we're ready to start. So, welcome to this panel about securing data in an AI-driven era. Yesterday, in the panel about AI, there were so many questions. One panel said that she's not worried about AI values; she is more concerned about human values because we haven't reached an agreement about that yet. So, before we start to regulate and implement it on AI, maybe we should reconsider our own behavior. Another panelist raised concerns that regulations in one country will lead to competitive markets in other countries. And a third raised concerns that regulations come too late after the tech, and we need to figure out how to initiate it at the concept and design of AI. So I left that session realizing that we still have so many questions. More today, we're going to talk about what strategies we should have to ensure privacy within AI systems, how we can be ethical in our approach and which ethics, and what are the best practices and forward thinking approaches for the private and public sector to maintain trust in the AI driven era. We will be trying to do a comparison between cybersecurity and AI, how we can benefit from our best practices in cybersecurity and move it into AI. We will try to answer some of these questions and maybe raise more questions, unfortunately, with my guests here. His Excellency Abdurrahman Ali Muhammad Al Maliki, President of National Cybersecurity Agency of Qatar. Ms. Muzna Siddiqui, she's the Global Governance Research and Planning Associate at the UN University Center for Policy Research. Mr. Mike Liu in the middle, Vice President, Senior Fellow of CZG, former Managing Director of DXC Technology, Greater China. Ms. Nudara Youssef, Executive Coordinator of Global Governance Innovation Network, and Dr. Amr Awadallah, Victara co-founder and CEO. We will start with you, Your Excellency Al Maliki, the President of NCSA Qatar, National Cybersecurity um, Authority. What are the main challenges we should work on and we should discuss and address when we work on securing data and AI? What are the challenges regulators face?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the beginning, I'd like to thank, thank you, Rawa, and all the guests here, and the organizer of this summit. في الحقيقة إن أول شيء لازم نتفق على
In fact, the first thing that we need to agree on is that the cybersecurity or the cyber system was never a challenge or a barrier to development.
أي موضوع
It was the main issue that lead to
مساعدة الشركات
improving and
الناشئة
updating the systems and developing the emerging companies and the government in reaching their goals peacefully without facing any risks or dangers. Of course, so when it comes to the AI, artificial intelligence, this issue that we need to admit that this is natural and it is inevitable also. We cannot say that we can exclude because AI is a natural development. It's about things that happened before like the cloud, for example, engineering, like the development in the internet, the development in the different algebras or others. So we shouldn't be against AI. No, on the contrary, we should follow this natural development and to help the parties that use AI in working on things that will help them or protect them while using the AI. Of course, as cybersecurity, we see AI from a different perspective. For example, we know that with the huge powers that we have, that the AI is using, this will give huge opportunities. The right of the people working in the cybersecurity field to solve their problems and to bridge the gaps and to identify the problems that they might face in the future. So this is why the AI is a tool. in the hand of the organizers of cybersecurity and the officials in the cybersecurity in different countries to facilitate their work. It's not against them, of course. The second point that you didn't mention is that AI has their own problems. It has certain ethical issues. For example, using the AI and reaching results or findings that are not true or false information. And this false information might limit the decisions that we might face based on the results of the AI. For example, I'll give you an example. For example, we can use the AI to come up with findings that is false, that is misleading, and that lead to certain ethnic problems. For example, give rights to certain categories and not give the rights to other categories. Now, we would like to move to try to find solutions to this problem, to try to find solutions and legislations and regulations related to AI. For example, at the level of the countries, we do not agree on specific laws and regulations related to AI. We can see that in the future, the near future, it's very difficult to agree on regulations for AI. And this is because the AI is changing very quickly in a fast way. So what we face is this fast change. In the previous technology, in the past technology, it used to take 10 years or 5 years, and it will give time to the decision makers. And those who put the legislations and regulations, they used to write them, try to implement them, and agree on them. As to the AI, no, it's different. The change is happening fastly and rapidly. There's something good in AI. It's that it uses the information from the user that ask about it. So it's very difficult to say there's specific regulation that we can use. However, we can agree on framework and regulations and legislations for those who use the AI to get the best results and findings while protecting their data and while reducing the threats and risks that they might face from cybersecurity issues.
Dig more with the problems raised with the and challenges exacerbated by AI. Ms. Muzna Sadiqi, we're hearing that AI, from one hand, is making the job of cybersecurity easier, faster, but at the same time, the same speed is creating a lot of challenges. How is it really affecting leadership and regulatory bodies?
Absolutely. Thank you for your question. And I'd actually like to speak to some of the points raised by His Excellency as well with regards to the issue of data privacy. That's one of the key issues that we see with regards to the governance of AI. And that is what I find to be a missing aspect on existing principles and regulations on AI, which is the aspect of data governance. Data forms the bedrock of artificial intelligence as well. So I do believe that one of the, if not the key challenges, then at least the main considerations for regulators will be to develop a parallel process that governs AI. But then coming to your question of what are some of the other challenges that they face, it's a broad range. And speaking again to what His Excellency was saying, AI is developing at such a rapid pace. We need to develop systems of governance that are agile. And that means that we need to look not only at the technicalities of the technology as well and try and find solutions that speak to that are long lasting and sustainable. So, for instance, I think it would be very important for regulators to govern AI on the basis of human rights principles. And we're actually seeing some of that development in the processes for the Global Digital Compact, which will be part of the Summit of the Future. And then also, very recently, there was the 75th anniversary of the Declaration on Human Rights. So, a few of the challenges that we're facing right now is disinformation and misinformation. That is a huge challenge because that can also promote acts of terrorism. And we are seeing that AI can actually lead to increased forms of radicalization, and it can also create huge amounts of challenges in conflict prone areas. It may spread the messages of nefarious actors more frequently. So so regulators need to find a way to address this challenge while also maintaining the balance of trying to not stifle innovation in AI at the same time, and also promote the various benefits that it has. For instance, AI has led to many developments in the health field. For instance, it can help with climate emergency, for example, humanitarianism, etc. So the key issues, for instance, are misinformation, disinformation, promotion of terrorism, for instance. But then there's also the issue of algorithmic bias. How do regulators ensure that algorithms that are being developed in a way that is transparent and have ethical frameworks, so that we're not enabling AI to lead to further structural inequalities. So I think when it comes to the main consideration that regulators should have for the governance of AI is ensuring that not only is it holistic and accountable, but also includes the perspectives of individuals and communities from the global north, but also the global south, because there are certain perspectives that may be hidden in these discussions, and it's very important to have a very global outlook and perspective on this. And to be fair, I guess that is the main challenge, which is how do we ensure that governance of AI is truly multi-stakeholder, and how exactly will we develop these partnerships between not only member states, but also the private sector, civil society organizations, the technical community, and any other relevant actors.
And how do we bridge the data gap? There's a lot of discrepancy between the global south and global north in terms of AI. You can have countries who are historically in the global south, but they're actually now in the global north when it comes to technology and AI. Mr. Mike Liu, how do you actually codify? How can regulations codify something like ethics, like human rights, and it's something that is not measurable and intangible?
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I look at the question is not about, how to regulate those areas as we just get started with these fascinating technologies. If I really look at the industry, we always say data is a petroleum in the 21st century, right? We need to really encourage all the industry, all the private sector and the public sectors to put the hands together. That's number one. Number two, and the same set of rules should be applied, but in the same form. What I mean is, if you see the crime in the streets, in the different areas, same rules should apply, but just by the not by the same mechanism, it's not by the same form of law enforcement. Maybe this goes to the cyberspace. I think enormous learning should be facilitated by different practice. I would be very cautious to use global south or use a different terms. To me, it's like every country, they have their own wisdom, desire to apply technology. As I was so inspired by the UN Secretary General yesterday was talking about AI as a technology to help the country to facilitate the digital transformation, right? I look at on the other hand is how we can apply the learning from different areas. We were three of us. We were in the same panel yesterday. We talk about how we should put the AI governance in a form which we can facilitate more learning from different practice, right? And that's how I want to contribute
So,
my two
so
cents.
again, more questions about how can we address this globally, Miss Nodara Youssef. When there will be countries that will say, "I prefer to be competitive over being ethical," how are we going to have a global AI that has a certain guidelines and framework?
Thank you for your really easy questions, Raoul. I appreciate it. Well, no, this is the core of the alignment problem, right? And we tend to see this as a trend in markets where you have a very high first mover advantage. There's a race to the top on innovation and moving into the market, and a race to a bottom on guardrails and security and safety. And so we sort of, you may have seen the report, but this is sort of we go into detail on it in the Future of International Cooperation report, which we've partnered with Doha Forum on. And we break it down into two main areas of risks that result from that. You have safety and engineering risks, and you have security risks. So, safety and engineering risk often already have regulation that we can apply to it. So, this includes legal liability, it includes licensing, and like Mike, you said, there's sort of a set of rules that we can probably draw from. Security risks become trickier because that's where you have as His Excellency mentioned, sort of and Musna as well, capacity for crime increases. You have generative AI, which has security risks, and you have lethal autonomous weapons as well. So, in the past, we've taken on non proliferation approaches with these types of security risks in these markets. So, if you take nuclear technology, for example, we've taken a non proliferation approach. We've done it with atomic energy. We've done it with starting to think about it in the terms of fossil fuels as well. The critical issue with AI is that it is a dual use technology. So there are massive positive uses for artificial intelligence. And when we see sort of a lot of companies calling for regulation on AI, part of the reason for it is that they benefit from an increase in cost of entry into the market, right? So we want to try to avoid oligopolies from forming because we've seen this happen in the past where a couple agents move in, create the rules of the game in their sort of area of mitigating risk, and then we find ourselves for years and years trying to reform the process to level out the playing field. So how do we balance, risk mitigation while also allowing for innovation, if not sort of competitiveness per se? And so in the Future of International Cooperation report, we sort of look at key principles to help us mitigate risks. The central idea is that a regime complex will emerge. Forum shopping is likely to happen. So, how do we draw certain baselines and red lines to ensure that we're sort of putting, as you said, especially at the 75th anniversary of the UDHR, human rights at the center? So, we go into safety, sustainability, and inclusion, SSI. And this is based on a mapping that we did of sort of several principles on AI from UNESCO, from the Commission on the Status of Women, from OECD, and others. Safety in the context of mitigating risk, sustainability in the context of the regulation itself being sustainable to sort of prevent forum shopping to the extent possible. So we're not regulating AI at a specific static time, but rather the regulation itself has capacity to handle innovation and inclusion in the context that many of the panelists have already mentioned.
Dr. Amr Awadallah, when we talk about the idea of businesses wanting to make more money, who would give up being having the monopoly on it or being an oligarch, like Ms. Yusuf said, to be responsible? So, how do you perceive the role of businesses in actually promoting responsible AI?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is those building AI, which my company is one of those, we need to take it upon ourselves to add things in the technology that helps address many of these problems. In the same way that, for example, auto manufacturers and car manufacturers over the years added things like the seat belt, the airbag, and that helped us make us a lot more safer. So one of the very key issues of these new AI systems like ChatGPT and others is an issue called hallucination. And can I get a show of hands from the audience? How many of you heard about hallucination? So I'm seeing about maybe 30% of the room raise their hand. I meant hallucination, obviously, in the context of large language models and AI, not in the context of Amsterdam. And what that concept is these models can sometimes make up stuff. They can make up stuff, lie. They can lie, essentially. And they make it up in a way that is so convincing because they're so good at language. They can say things in such a clear way. And that's actually one of the biggest inhibitors right now for using this technology in a business construct. In a conversational fun construct, if I'm doing a poem, working on a novel, just chit chatting with an AI, it's fine. He can lie to me as much as he wants. But if I'm writing a medical report, if I'm doing a legal contract, if I'm doing an accounting statement for a company, an audit, no, he can't. Everything has to be factual. So many of us in the industry are very focused on that, solving that problem. I will point you to a very interesting report that we published through the New York Times, actually. If you go to my profile on LinkedIn, my Twitter handle is my last name, Awadallah. You'll see it pinned right there. And we showed the probability of hallucination, meaning of lying of different models out there. And even the best of the best, like GPT-4. GPT-4 right now from OpenAI absolutely is the best large language model there is. It still makes up stuff 3% of the time. So 3% of the time, it will put a statement in there that's completely made up, completely false. So that's one of the very key issues that we all really need to solve before AI is going to be widespread within a business construct. Another very key issue is explainability. It's very important in a business construct to explain why is this the right answer. You cannot just tell me this is the right answer and believe me, I'm the AI. I'm telling you this is the right answer. Take my words. No, you have to explain to me how you came up with that answer. Why is this the right diagnosis for this disease? Why is this the right legal action to take next? Why is this the right investment to be making? You have to explain that to me. So explainability is very important. And then last but not least is intellectual property and bias, which many of my colleagues here also shared is very, very important to tackle. So all of us collectively in the industry right now are working very hard on solving these problems. They're not solved yet. That's why I think there is some overhype in terms of, oh, we can take AI and deploy it for every use case. No, there is some use cases where it's not ideal, but collectively between us, I think we'll be able to solve all of these problems within the next year. That's why the attention is deserved, because this technology, once we solve these problems, is going to significantly change how we do things.
Most importantly, everyone always, in any discussion about AI, talks about the use in medicine, the misdiagnosis. But for me, I think we're not talking about our manufacturing. So please, if any of you is in that field, please don't ask AI how to make a bomb that would not kill a lot of people. We're not sure of the solution
That's
that.
actually one of the alignment problems that we do is we suppress these answers from being given. Like
Yeah.
like if you ask about how do I make anthrax or how do I make a bomb, the AI will say, sorry,
How do I
I
solve
can't tell you.
unemployment? One of the answers of AI was to kill humans. That's the main. That's what it came up with. Your Excellency, Al Maliki, you talked about cybersecurity, specific initiatives, the use of how you use cybersecurity and AI together. Um, in the terms of the risks that are propagated by AI specifically, what are the initiatives of cybersecurity that are there?
لو نرجع شوي
If you want to go back to the cybersecurity expert and to use the phone, in the past, the cybersecurity expert and the organizers in all the world were able to provide an environment, a good environment, an enabling and safety environment for all the users to use the technology. And of course, we cannot not take the responsibility as cybersecurity regulators or experts. So the main issue behind the work is focusing on three main pillars: persons, technology, and the operations. So this is why, hopefully, in the future, this is our duty to continue in the same way and at the same pace to protect the cybersecurity or cyber echo. At the same way, we were providing safeguards and protection for the non-AI systems. On the other hand, and as we, as regulators or countries and governments, try to protect the cybersecurity or cyberspace, at the same time, there are people who are using the technology and the artificial intelligence in an attempt to violate or breach or to breach the systems. So this is why the use is a benefit is a mutual between the defense and the attack who are trying to use the AI and creating these systems. So they are setting, or maybe they're faster than us in the pace of the breach. Because I have a goal, which is at the same time to put the guidelines and design them and to guarantee not to develop the companies or the governments. As to the second party, no, their own goal is to breach and to destroy. That's it. This is why we need to bear in our mind that we need to work in addition to the framework that we put. The people are using the same AI and attacking us, and to try to find the new solutions and attacking us and new ways for attacking us. As you have said, we cannot, as responsibles and officials and the cybersecurity field at the countries, we cannot forget that we need to protect the users against anything related to AI. This is why we can take and we have launched part of a series of initiatives. The first one was that we have established the National Committee for AI in Qatar, and we, as cyber people, we have taken the initiative to start preparing our guidelines on how to use the AI in the government and non-government. These are general guidelines that will allow the users to protect their systems. The second point is that we have started working on raising awareness. So usually the framework are being, when it's being designed, are being used by specialists and experts. However, we need to raise awareness, and we have launched workshops to raise awareness in some of the sectors because we think we need to target them, like the media sector, for example. This is one of the sectors that usually are targeted in the upcoming period because you can falsify even the videos. Even the videos can be falsified. If a person has worked on a video and they're saying things other than what's really said. The second sector is the banking sector, and the third one is the education sector, and of course the health sector. We should not forget it.
And not just internally at Al Jazeera. By the way, I'm Rawa Ojean. I'm a presenter at Al Jazeera. We have this discussion ongoing within the journalistic community about, is our job going to be fact checkers, or how are we going to deal with the amount, because most of the thing we do can actually be done now by AI. Muzna, Ms. Siddiqui, when I get back to you with the idea of data governance, when we talk about data governance, how can international community improve the coordination of data governance while prioritizing the regulation of AI?
Thank you so much. So, the report of the High Level Advisory Board on Effective Multilateralism, which was a board convened by the Secretary General, it has created a few recommendations on data governance, which I think can be taken forward on this aspect. So, one of the recommendations is on a mutual commitment framework between the public sector and the private sector in advance of crises to share data. Now, this is extremely necessary, and we saw this in the case of the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, where we were shown the necessity of effective data sharing in a transparent and trustworthy and reliable and also consistent manner between the two sectors. And we saw how important that was, and that will continue to be a key issue that there needs to be key collaboration on. There's challenges on both sides in terms of how exactly to promote that level of trust and relationships. And that's exactly what we think should be addressed in the issue of data governance. Because at the end of the day, it's data governance or AI governance. Neither of these two are issues that can be solved only by the public sector alone. We need to incorporate the opinions and also the valuable insights of the stakeholders who are relevant in in this discussion. And a second recommendation is on promoting an international decade for data. And we believe that this can have a great opportunity to not only raise awareness on key aspects of data governance, whether that's the human rights aspect, for example, data privacy and data protection, but then also other key aspects such as the issue of synthetic data, which has its own challenges, but also comes with its own potential positive influences as well, and other aspects, for example, interoperability between different governance mechanisms that already exist, and how can we effectively address those. So we do believe that the Summit of the Future, the upcoming Summit of the Future, and the Global Digital Compact, which you may have heard in the previous few sessions, as mentioned by the Secretary General as well, these can offer as a key first step taken by the international community, especially the member states, to come to agreement on voluntary principles on how they can create best standards and practices for data governance. Because at the end of the day, the main challenge here is that there's already an existing plethora of data governance and AI governance principles and regulations, not only at the national and regional level, but also developed by industry leaders, by CSOs as well. And there's a certain benefit in all these different aspects, and they all come with their own unique perspectives and views. So the key issue, or the key issue now is how do we make these different governance principles interoperable? How do we pick out the best principles from each of these and ensure that there's a global system in place that can serve as the foundation for future global efforts towards the governance?
Dr. Awadallah, what are your thoughts when you hear about regulating AI as someone coming from the private sector? Uh, is it too soon or too late?
Very good question. We have to be very good question. We have to be balanced in terms of how we do it, because over regulation will absolutely stifle innovation. There is no question about that. But at the same time, no regulation at all will create the Wild West where many problems will start to happen. So, like His Excellency correctly said, I should not be allowed to take a copy of you, Rawa, and make a video that looks like you, speaks like you, and everything without your permission. Today, there is no regulations around that, and people can do that, which is really dangerous. And I think there is a very big lawsuit right now in the U.S. By Scarlett Johansson, the very famous actress, uh, asking that that be stopped, that we have regulations that stop things like this from happening. It's my likeness, it's my sound, it's my shape. It should not be used by somebody else without my explicit permission. So we need regulations for things like that. But at the same time, if we over-regulate too much, then only the big companies like the Googles of the world, the Microsofts of the world will be able to go through that regulations. And the newer companies like myself, so I'm biased here, that are trying to innovate won't be able to do the same or go through the same regulations of these big companies, which means that all of these smaller, younger companies trying to do amazing things will fail. So we have to be very, very balanced in terms of we do it. And we also have to be practical as well in terms of how we do it. So I have a very interesting example for self-driving cars. In San Francisco now we have self-driving cars. Whenever you come to San Francisco, you can try Waymo or you can try Cruise. They're two of the many we have. But very recently, Cruise had an accident where they killed a human, right? So a human died from that accident. And immediately the regulator said, okay, no more Cruise. And they shut them down completely, and the CEO got fired and GM now is in financial trouble. But that was just one human that lost their life. We, human drivers, every year we kill 40,000 people in the US. I don't know how much here in Qatar in the Middle East, but in the US, 40,000 people die every year from humans doing a bad accident. So if we have the AI only killing one every year or killing 10 or 100, then we should be flexible about allowing that. So that's my appeal is we as regulators, we have to be practical as opposed to emotional and sensational in terms of how we make our decisions.
Again, the idea that humans are not responsible enough, so why are they preaching AI is
Yes.
circulating again. Miss Youssef, is there a disconnect between regulatory mandates and responsible AI and its actual implementation in the real world operational environment?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And if you'll allow me, I'm going to slightly maybe push back on some of the comments in the panel. I think when we talk about regulation, there's at least three questions that we need to answer before we even get to implementation. First is, what are we regulating? And that includes, are we regulating the data? Are we regulating the use? Are we regulating the application and the development of the AI? Because, for example, while, with automated cars, there's been one death, lethal autonomous weapons could lead to so many more. So, which part of the system are we regulating? It's also how much do we regulate? So we've seen a spectrum of regulation come from different countries. So we've seen, in the UK, they've created a new framework, but then the question is to sort of apply existing sort of copyright law and things like that. China has taken a sort of more we need to sort of go through security checks on everything that we're seeing approach. The African Union sort of falls somewhere in between that. So how much do we regulate? But also who does the regulation? We've seen ICANN pop up. We see the EU has a framework that's going to diffuse, probably will. The UN is working on a lot of things. So all of this then adds to the difficulty of the implementation problem, because until you figure out what's happening in the regulation and what we're doing there, implementation is tricky. But I think this is where the work that sort of Musna and your team are doing with the UN is particularly important, because you need some sort of collective action to say, look, here are the red lines for humanity, and here is what we really need to agree on, and that red line will help us with the implementation problem. So, for example, the UN has called for by 2026 a treaty on lethal autonomous weapons, a UN office for AI, and then that brings into question, what can we draw on that we already know? Because AI has a lot of uncertainty, and this is a big part of the implementation problem. Um, and one of the things that we can start to do as people that are thinking about the regulation side of this question is, what models do we already have that we can draw from? So we're seeing an increasing turn to the International Atomic Energy Agency as an agile, sort of flexible approach that we could potentially take to AI regulation. So there's been proposals, for example, for an intergovernmental artificial intelligence agency. And I think that there is one big thing there is, while something like nuclear technology, you can actually gather data on. I mean, there's radiation, it leaves a trace, you're able to map it. AI has a massive black box problem that is difficult to regulate and difficult to think about. So then the question is, how do we gather the data, not just the upstream data, so what is inputted into AI, but how much data can we gather about AI itself, the use, the misuses, the monitoring and evaluation of whether regulation is being implemented. So the downstream data that will then help us circle back into regulation. So I think it's not just a call of securing data as per this panel, and the privacy and the inputs, rightly so, Scarlett Johansson should be furious. But equally, how are we tracking what's happening with the data and how fast it's innovating to therefore inform regulators of what they need to be doing and then therefore
And
implementing?
how is it going to be used? I think this is also the main maybe problem, because if we keep using it and having like a barrier or like a buffer zone between AI and the use on the ground, I think we can still manage it. But if we're automating lots of things based on AI, what do we automate and what do we not do? I'm going to ask the last question to Mr. Mike Liu and then open the floor for questions. If you have any question, raise your hand afterwards. Um, when Ms. Youssef talks about the atomic energy regulation, chemical weapons, lethal weapons, there are so many examples in the past in humanity of how to moderate or how to regulate technology. But the speed of the technology of AI, is it allowing that? Are the previous practices usable to regulate AI?
I look at the simple answer is yes. The old set of rules that's accumulated by a number of all the expertise over years of development. Same set of rules, as I mentioned earlier, well apply in the new circumstances. Number one. Number two, only differences is technology, is cyberspace. It's literally, virtually, you cannot see it. You cannot smell it, right? Last time we have a book, we have record. Now it's literally going everywhere. That's how I tend to agree with our panelists by saying how we take balanced approach. When we look at this whole thing, how we can accumulate our learnings and share the best practice. That's number one. Number two is as also the what I have seen as far as China is concerned. Our government is promoting how to encourage the data free flow to address the business needs. At the same time, government also releasing first ever legally binding regulation for those AI service providers. They need to come up with the sort of the requirement to comply with the requirement as far as they provide AI services. So they need to report how they write the algorithm, how to restore the algorithm, how they are going to use this algorithm to provide services to the consumers. They need to report the case back to the regulators as well as to the public. So I look at all these things can be learned. But the good thing is AI is growing very rapidly, and lots of questions, good questions, have been raised. That just give us a guidance how we should learn, how we should apply. The old set of rules apply in the new today's, in a cyberspace manner.
Thank you very much. I think this is the first panel. Yeah.
On the same topic that was being addressed right now, um, it's not possible to regulate AI in the same way that we have regulated nuclear energy. And the reason why is very simple. With nuclear energy, it was more than just the know-how of how to do it. There is material you need to do it, and that's not the case here. And not only that, the large language models behind these AI systems, they're so small. Like they fit on a. If you take a flash card from the Nintendo Switch that your kids have, which is on the order of half a terabyte. That's how big these models are. And as his excellency can tell you, when you have something of that size, it's not that hard to steal. So security by obscurity is almost impossible when it comes to AI. We won't be able to regulate it in the same way. That's number one. Number two, as we have learned from the nuclear era, the intentions of the human civilization was nuclear should only be used for good. It should not be used to make bombs. We still made bombs. And I think that's my opinion now. I could be wrong. I think it doesn't matter how much regulations we do, there will be countries that will build, unfortunately, autonomous weapons with AI. That will happen.
So this is the first panel, I think, where we actually have 10 minutes for the audience. If any of you has a question, if not, I have lots of questions. So don't worry about it. Anyone? The gentleman, then the gentleman there. And the gentleman there.
Thank you. My question is regarding the huge gap now in technology between the North and South again. And probably this gap will be huge when some countries will combine it with the quantum computing, for example. We know that probably United States and China, they have now quantum computers, and this gap, if it's widen more, and we are not sure uh, whether these countries they are willing to look to the other countries for the rights of other countries. So what we can do, or what the international institutions, how they can save the countries in the south.
To whom do you address the question? Or do you want me to ask them who would
The one who like
to answer? Mr. Manklu.
Maybe I give a short answer from a China standpoint. Definitely for the quantum computing, we're investing a lot of effort, money, but I do not see any roadblocks to sharing this technology with the global south or those countries indeed. But I think the ultimate objective is we need to use or leverage the power of computing for the good cause of actions. That's the only thing I think I would like to add.
I have maybe a very simplistic, because I'm not an expert in AI, but I was always wondering, since all these tech companies and AI, they're not actually working within borders of a country, even if the headquarters is there. They are working on clouds, they are working globally normally. Or
Yes and no.
yes,
Yes and no. For example, there are good companies, in my opinion, like Meta, Facebook, where they are releasing the AI models they built open source, right? So Llama is one of the most popular AI models. And when they do that, then they neutralize the gap between the North and the South because everybody now has access to this amazing technology. But there are other companies like OpenAI, which are very closed in what they're developing, right? They used to be open, by the way.
even if they're called open.
Yes, they should change the name to be closed AI, but they are now no. Whatever they're building is theirs, and it's only theirs. And they're being restricted from giving it to other countries in an open form. You can use it, meaning over the cloud. But if they decide to turn it off on you, they can turn it off on you because it's held by them. So that is creating some gaps. So my vision on this is as we get more and more organizations that are like Meta and doing it in the open source, then that will eliminate that gap from taking place. And I see it happening. So I'm comfortable from that dimension.
Ms. Khadiki raised her hand before.
Yes, thank you so much. And just to answer the gentleman's question as well, I think it's a very important question to ask because that is absolutely something that we should be considering. When we're talking about AI governance, we need to take into account the foundation of it, which is digital development. And ensuring that we decrease the digital divide. And just going back to the topic of the Summit of the Future and the Global Digital Compact, I think that provides an excellent opportunity for us to provide the necessary not only principles but also infrastructure that is needed to sort of develop digital infrastructure in places in the global south. But also this can be an excellent opportunity for exchange of information and best practices. The global digital compact can potentially also develop principles to ensure that we're exchanging open source data, as mentioned earlier, and to bring individuals together to from the global north and the global south to decide on what needs to be the very basis digital principles before, because we're and this was mentioned in another panel yesterday, and I found it to be a very interesting point that currently we're in an age where we're seeing the rapid development of AI, but in a few short years we'll be hardened, I suppose, in our opinions on how to regulate AI. So this is a key opportunity, especially at the level of the international community, for member states and key stakeholders to come together and decide what is important for us in a sustainable and agile manner as well, so that we're forward facing and taking into consideration future potential consequences and implications of AI, which we can't even think of right now. So, in a nutshell, that would be the answer to your question.
Miss Yusuf.
Also, firstly, Mazna has already said a lot of what I wanted to say, so that makes my job a little bit easier. But just to add very quickly, I think one other thing that is crucially important, especially when we talk about the divide, is that there are some countries that approach, so even from just a logistical point of view, offices that are taking on cyber or digital issues, each country defines that in a slightly different way. So in many countries, we're seeing digital offices take on the digital divide issue in terms of access to the internet, stable internet, and they're still sort of at that frontier. But those are also the countries that have the most positive potential for AI. There was a brilliant piece in Foreign Policy that talked about AI at tech frontiers. So I think what we need to be careful of is ensuring that we're, even if countries don't currently have artificial intelligence as a priority agenda item on their sort of boards at the moment, that they are a part of the conversation. Because what we don't want to do is, once we solidify, have a couple stakeholders have defined the rules of the game. We've seen it with the UN Security Council. We've seen it in the climate policy discussions. We've seen it in other discussions, in the nuclear discussions as well. And we can't repeat this same mistake of letting couple stakeholders define all the rules of the game, and then we spend years and years and years trying to reform it. So I hope that, in 20 years' time at Doha Forum, we're not discussing the reform of AI governance, that we actually got it right and had the right stakeholders in the room.
The question from, you still have your question? Yeah.
Thank you very much for a beautiful presentation, and I'd like to echo thank you to Qatar for hosting the Doha Forum and bringing people from all around the world together. My question is on AI ethics. You know, I come from a spiritual background. I'm an imam at Cambridge Central Mosque, and you know, the prophetic statement on the signs of the end times is for someone to give birth to their master. Are we creating a monster that we are not going to be able to control? And in regards to that, the second question I have is, will my future robot be able to do my 5 daily prayers for me?
And can we pass the mic to the gentleman there? And the lady, then we're going to pass the time. But yeah, the gentleman, the lady, is to whom do you address the question?
Hi.
To Mr. Awad
I
Allah.
can I can I can answer that.
Yeah.
Should I answer that
Yeah.
already? Okay. I'm in the middle of building these things. There is no threat whatsoever of these things becoming what you saw in movies like Skynet from the Terminator. Not even close. So there's lots of people, fear mongers out there that are making arguments like that we're building something bigger than us. No, it's not even close. We are building something that's very smart, that can do a lot of intelligent work, but has no consciousness. So one of the simple examples I love to give, I'll ask you a question. How many faces do you think you can remember, and then remember the name for that face? How many you think you can do that for? 100 maybe. Yeah, maybe 100. I mean, some of us, the really good folks in media, maybe they can go up to 1,000. But that's about it. AI can go to millions of faces. Remember all of these faces and all of these names. Does that mean it's smarter than you? No, it's not. It doesn't mean it's smarter than you. So that's why I would like to give you all the comfort that no, we're not working on anything where the AI is becoming like our overlords. Like that no, we have controls, we can control exactly what's doing, we can control exactly what's saying, we control exactly what kind of ethics it's following or not. We control that 100%. We are in control. So I just want to give you that comfort.
I was last week also at WISE Summit. We talked about AI, and one of the fierce advocates for artificial intelligence, she was saying part of being human is being intelligent. For me, I think being human is the ability of combining reason and emotion and taking actions. Yeah. The gentleman.
Yes, I have a question. I think I'm going to underline also, what the gentleman said. There is always call upon the governments to regulate, regulate, regulate. The technology is always there. Make us more reactive. Number two, why not, in a way, enforce the technology manufacturers or at least the AI solution providers to apply ethics and safety by design?
Mhm.
To alleviate the burden on the governments and the regulators. Today, we are basically being very reactive. I've been to several sessions. It's always, government do this, government do that.
Mhm. To whom do you address the question?
That's the question. Why not basically, ask the technology manufacturers to apply ethics
Mhm.
and safety by design, which in a way may minimize, the regulatory burden on the governments.
Miss Yusuf can answer, and can we pass the mic to the lady?
Yeah, so there's two levels to that. The first is yes, baseline principles. So this is what I said at the beginning as well. It's not just governments enforcing baseline principles, but this isn't going to work if the private sector doesn't buy in to that process and buy into defining the regulations. Because I mean, some of these private sector companies have largest capacity than many states, right? So that's the first thing. The second is also coding ethics into the AI systems and training them on ethical implications. So we discussed this in the context of the autonomous weapons question, because that's sort of a difficult baseline to handle. And in the report, we write about the need to embed digital advocates into lethal autonomous weapons, because you're right, they are going to happen. We have to be prepared for that. But saying let's code in international humanitarian law into the lethal autonomous weapons. So even though there's a black box in AI, even though we don't know if countries can trust each other, at least they can trust the fact that there is a baseline code in the system. A digital advocate is what we call it, to say, okay, this is at least inbuilt into humanitarian law. So we really
Mhm.
don't derail entirely.
The last question.
Rawa, I have a quick example on that because we have been doing that in other parallel industries. And the car is one of the best examples. So, yes, we tell the car manufacturers, fix the cars for us, put an airbag, put a seatbelt. That's great. But that does not mean that you still need not have regulations that tell the driver of the car you should not be driving when you're drunk.
Mm.
You should not be crossing a red light. So you need both, actually. You always need
Miss
both.
Yusuf is not happy about you. It's clear that you're coming really from the private sector. and from
This
the-
is why we need to work together, right? This is why we need to work
Yes,
together.
agreed,
Yeah.
agreed.
Respond to this because we need to engage the public more into these kind of conversations because at the end we are the client, we are the users.
Mhm.
You know, the idea of basically applying ethics and safety by inception and design is to not to minimize the role of the government, it's just to be work together and basically adopting regulations which are reasonable for innovation.
But for
Today
example,
today
AI,
we
I
see
can code
basically a
it
disconnect.
immediately with one single word to pass the
Yeah,
mic to the
I'm sorry.
to the lady.
Uh,
It will be easier than with the humans.
I think that was a really good question. So my question for anyone in the panel comes from, let's say, a prospective conspiracy theory. As I'm sure the panel knows, last month Sam Altman was kicked out from the founder of Chat GPT was kicked out from OpenAI, and then Microsoft put him back as a board member. Now the question is, some conspiracy theory says that he was attempting to enforce regulations. As I'm sure the panel discussed, there are a lot of efforts to regulate AI. And so the question is there institutions that do not want AI regulated? Uh, and if so, why?
Oh, so of course, I'm Silicon Valley, so I know this issue very close. This tension with Sam Altman, it is about international dominance of AI. It is about that. So Sam has been going out. Sam is a believer in a big world. We should all work together, AI for everyone. His board might not have had the same belief. And he made this deal with Prosperity 7. Prosperity 7 is this investment arm from Aramco. And they were going to invest $50 million in a new type of AI chip that is going to be way superior than even quantum computing when it comes to AI. And the US didn't like that. And his board didn't like that. And that's why he was told, no, you can't make that deal. And that deal was backtracked. So actually, OpenAI now went and they paid back Aramco their money and got back these shares. So to answer your question, yes, there are governments out there, including mine, that want to control AI as
And
much as they
she
can.
was asking about companies that don't want to be controlled by AI. But this is why this is a panel, part of a forum. You can continue the discussion outside if you want. You know their faces now. His Excellency Abdurrahman Al Maliki, President of National Cybersecurity Agency in Qatar. Miss Nudara Youssef, Executive Coordinator for Global Governance Innovation Network. Mr. Mike Liu, Vice President and Senior Fellow of CZG. Ms. Muzna Siddiqui, Global Governance Research and Planning Associate at the UN University Center for Policy Research, and Dr. Amr Awadallah, the co-founder and CEO of Vectara. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.